Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are doing the fifth and final Vinegar Syndrome November 2022 review. And today we are talking about a really fun, campy slasher film from 1987, I believe. I should have confirmed. 1986. Yes. Directed by Dominic Brascia. And this is the film Evil Laugh. This is the one that I was most excited for, just based off the cover art, and I was thankfully blessed that it held up to my expectations. This is your very typical slasher taking place in a house, and all of our characters are a bunch of yuppies. The dental students and doctors. One of them wants to be a pediatrician. One of them wants to be a dermatologist. One of them is wanting to run a foster home for children, which plays a really important part of this movie, as the house that they buy or they're checking out and wanting to buy has a history of murder because a serial killer went in there and murdered dozens of children, including babies, and there's a really disgusting part that I didn't really appreciate, but it added to the scariness, I guess, and the creepiness. Is one of our woman characters, after a few of our members have been killed in that group, they're talking with another woman survivor, and she's like, oh my gosh, he must have held them upside down and cut their throats and let the blood pool on the table. And the woman is sitting there like, oh my god, why are you telling me this? This is so awful. And this entire movie is very self-aware. And even one of the main characters, he is a horror movie snob. And he reads Fangoria magazine. There's a shot in the beginning of the film when both our main character groups, we have a group of men who are showing up, and they have car troubles, and so they stop and they have to replace a flat tire or whatever, and there's issues with that. And the other kind of half of our cast, who are the girlfriends, their car shuts down randomly, so they both have car troubles. And the film guy is reading Fangoria, reading about Friday 13th Part 4, which is a New Beginning, I believe. And that's probably the most famous one. Special effects by Tom Savini, of course. And ends up that the director, Brascia, he had been in Friday 13th Part 4. And that was a connection I did not notice because he wasn't on camera. I just didn't even process that name. But they had some behind-the-scenes footage and pictures from the filming of this on the documentary. And they showed him, and I was like, yeah, there he is. Like, I saw him get killed. Like, I recognize him. And so that was a really fun little connection. But this movie is very campy. It's very cheesy. One of the last things that I wrote, which was basically after me just recounting every death and how it was very low budget, but it got the job done in terms of being an effective slasher. One of the last things I said was that this movie felt like a cozy blanket. That's exactly what this movie is. This movie is not breaking any new ground, maybe on the film meta elements, but that's about it. And the killer doesn't have the best costume. The mask is not this. It looks, I'm going to see if it's, yeah, there it is. So it looks like that. I'm trying to get it so the light isn't in there. It doesn't look the best, but they said that they only had one mask for the movie. It was made for not much money. They would not say how much, and if they did, I must have missed it. But this movie is your very standard house slasher film, as I've already said. And this is exactly what I know Vinegar Syndrome as, because they've done a lot of these movies, and it's always a lot of fun. This one I think is definitely better than most of those. It was just a lot of fun. Uh, all of our characters are somewhat interesting. You don't feel bad when they die, but you definitely cheer them on by the end. And the ending to this movie is a little cheesy, and they purposely did that because the distributor wanted more TNA. So that's why the ending exists. Where they ended it originally made more sense, but I don't really care for the last few seconds of it or whatever. But at the same time, it's whatever. Everything else in this movie is really great, but the one special feature to talk about, there's really only one that I even had interest in. There was one with the commentary track with the hysteria continues, and then there was the documentary called "The Joy of Laughter: Making Evil Laugh," and that's a 78-minute documentary that Vinegar Syndrome has put out, and I loved it. I love that documentary. This is the type of documentary that I love to see by Vinegar Syndrome. The ones that were on the Homegrown Horror set, I did not like. I thought they were too long. I just stopped watching them because they weren't fun. This one was a whole lot of fun to watch. Everybody involved just was so excited and so passionate about the movie, and it just poured through the screen, and it was just, I guess, refreshing to me after the Homegrown Horrors where everyone's like, yeah, I was in the movie and I enjoyed it. It was fun. The director was really nice. And it was like, okay, like, get into this. And these people were very passionate. It was just so nice. Apparently the writer slash actor for this movie couldn't find gigs, and neither could the director after being in Friday 13th Part 4. And so they both decided, let's just make a movie ourselves. And so they wrote the script for it, and the director had never directed a movie before. He was one of the victims in Friday 13th Part 4, and not much else in just in movies. And so they were really going off just going off of whatever they knew, which wasn't much. A few of them had gone to film school, so they were able to bring that in and really help out. But this movie was made over a 7-day period, which is a very short time when it comes to these type of movies. Usually it's about a month. But the makeup guy that was in charge of this movie, who made really good blood, the blood looked amazing on camera, and the restoration looks really good too. He made just buckets upon buckets of blood. And so they were surprised when the distributor was like, hey, you don't have enough blood in this movie. They were like, are you kidding? Like, this guy's a huge George Romero fan. All he did was make blood behind the scenes, and he was paid $200, which isn't enough to get to Tom Savini levels of gore, but it did the movie justice, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the kills. The first kill of the delivery boy who shows up with groceries, he couldn't find any liver, any cow liver, and so the killer, he kills the delivery boy, not on camera, but you see the aftermath, and it's pretty bloody, and he cuts out the delivery boy's liver and puts it in a bowl and pretends as if, you know, the delivery boy left it there for the guests who are coming up to house hunt, I guess. And one of the characters, the name is Barney, and he's the big horror movie fan. And they said that they really wanted somebody to be self-aware about the genre, because they wanted to do something new with the slasher. And they thought that would make the movie kind of stand above the rest. And it definitely does. It's a shame that they weren't given more budget so they can more fully realize the vision of the movie. But there's some really just great stuff throughout this entire documentary. I didn't write down everything. I would probably just go on for an hour, but I would highly recommend everybody to check this documentary out. Um, Especially the makeup artist. He had just so much fun kind of anecdotes to talk about. He at one point talks about how they went to a pool in order to film the pool scenes because the house that they were filming at was about to be sold, and or was just about to be put on market for people to potentially buy it. And they were talking about how there wasn't a pool there, so they had to go film somewhere else to do the pool scenes. And so they borrowed some celebrities' pool, and it ended up that there were a lot of broken tennis rackets in the pool, and they were like, huh, that's weird, why is it in there? And the guy who was in charge was like, oh yeah, Mel Brooks comes over all the time and plays tennis, and when he loses, he gets really pissed off and breaks the rackets and throws them into the pool and leaves. And cool, that little connections like that is just like, it's always fun to hear about. And I'm a huge fan of Mel Brooks. I think Spaceballs is his best. I also love Young Frankenstein. Haven't seen Blazing Saddles in a very long time, but that I'm sure holds up still. Um, there's a really fun song montage. When you turn on the main menu for this movie, you'll hear the main song that echoes throughout the film, and it's supposed to be it's supposed to be a homage to Cyndi Lauper's "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," and they made an entire sequence in this movie where the characters are dancing, setting up the house for them to live in for the weekend or whatever, and it's fun. That was kind of the first point where I was like, okay, like, they're nailing the tone. They are obviously having a lot of fun. This isn't them just plodding through, the shooting days. Like, they're actually here to have fun, and they talk about that throughout the documentary. Every actor, producer, they did not get the director. I think he died recently, and also the lead actor from the intro of the film, he died just last year. I think the producer was talking about in the documentary, but all of them said that even though it was just 7 days and they had to stay up all night and basically sleep on set that entire week in order to get the movie done on time, they said that they just had so much fun with this and they didn't even care if they were going to be paid for this gig. They just wanted to have fun and make this movie and make it as good as they could. And this is a great little slasher movie. I enjoyed it. I think it could have been better with just a little bit more budget. Have the kills be more kind of explosive and bloody. But for the most part, they accomplished what they wanted to do. They even talk about at one point how the entire cast and crew was shocked when this movie was put out theatrically, which I had no idea about. Apparently, they printed like 25, 35, or 30 millimeter prints of the movie and showed them around the country in multiple theaters. And a couple of the members showed photographs from them at the theater with the poster right beside whatever Robin Williams movie was out at the time. And they're all smiling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, we're here. Like, our movie is showing in a movie theater. And they said that was definitely, like, it just felt so validating to them when they saw it and they thought it just looked so good. And apparently, when the DVD release finally came around about, I guess, 20 years later, the guy who did the DVD disappeared off the face of the earth with the original film elements, and they couldn't find him. And it was years later they found out that he went to jail and died in jail. And so they were like, okay, I guess, the movie had its run. And the good people at Vinegar Syndrome, they found the original prints, or copies of prints, maybe from the theater runs. And they said, hey, we have the DVD ready, or the Blu-ray ready. Let's do some interviews when the actors recounts. and he said, oh my gosh, all hail Vinegar syndrome. And that's another thing that someone on the Homegrown Horror set said about the kind of restoration of these movies was all hail Vinegar syndrome. They are saving these movies from obscurity. And this movie is a really fun slasher movie. It's not the best one. It's not the worst one. It's not an average one. It's just above average. I really had a fun time with it. There's a couple references to Christmas, so I guess if you really want to dig deep like people do with Die Hard, you can classify this as a Christmas film. This was a lot of fun. I had a great morning going through this release. There's really not too much to talk about, because again, this is just your everyday slasher film from the 80s, but I had a lot of fun. There's really not much else to talk about, so that was Evil Laugh, 1986. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will be working on my ranking very shortly. See you then.